Welcome to tonight's stream. I am going to be, I know I didn't have much audio last time except for this lovely lo-fi music. But my spouse was playing Final Fantasy and that was going to be kind of disruptive to the vibe of cute woodland animals hearing a whole bunch of, destruction of weird mecha creatures and all of that. So, I am going to be working on some more woodland creatures. These are the ones from the two that we got done last week. I'm actually going to fix this because it is bothering me that this little brown bear cub is kind of blending into the tree. Just there's not enough contrast here. So I'm going to go back and try and fix the tree and lighten it up so that we can make the little brown bear pop a little bit more like, kind of like what this little chipmunk managed to do. So that's where I'm going to start tonight, and then I'm going to roll the dice again, like last week, to find out which of the ones in this very large stack are going to be the next ones to paint. So I have a feeling, based on last week, I'm probably only going to get maybe 2 or this and 1 done, but we'll see. Maybe I will pick one this week that will go faster than last week, or maybe I will pick one that will go much slower. Anyway, so I've got a new year, new plans. I'm actually hoping to do a little bit more on this channel, or with these streams. Hopefully find a little bit better visual I guess visual presentation would be the way to say it for this. Just things look a little nicer, cleaner. Honestly, I've started doing this streaming stuff just to kind of get me to commit to a day, an hour at least once a week to focus on working on art projects. And this was kind of a little bit of accountability that I was trying to do. So that's why I got this started, And it also seems to be the thing that artists are presenting their processes and stuff. Sometimes through streaming, sometimes through YouTube, which some of you may be watching this on a replay on YouTube at some point, or not. I have no high expectations for viewers. If even one person watches this, either live or on replay, that'll be kind of cool. But yeah, the main reason for this is to get me to this channel, whether you're watching on YouTube or Twitch, it is to just try and get me to be a little bit more consistent with my art time and make sure that it doesn't. This is a hobby for me. I am not a full-time artist. I do not have a particularly art-centric based creative career or anything like that. I work with computers. A lot of computers. Very small computers, in fact. Kind you'd find in your toaster, your microwave, or your car, for example. Be surprised where little micro all the places microcontrollers are. But I'm here to talk about art, not my job, not my day job. And yeah, part of me is like, hey, it'd be really cool if like my art and streaming and all that stuff could take off and quit my day job and just become a full-time artist. Well, that would be nice. I also don't have any grand delusions of that for myself. Some people can do it. Some people, I mean, there are quite a few artists. You go out anywhere on YouTube, even Twitch, you'll find plenty of artists out there who are making it. Oh, that's another thing is, like, part of me does kind of want to try making my art, some of my art into more of a business. But right now it's going to be a quote-unquote hobby business, so no grand expectations of great amounts of funds or anything like that. So, but I'm also learning that me and talking and doing art is going to result in probably some really random ramblings. So if you're willing to bear with me, more power to you. But yeah, so this channel, purpose of it mainly is for art. I might go in, since I'm technically streaming this to 2 channels at once, so I might go back into my YouTube channel and remove the weeks where I choose to play a game to entertain you guys, as opposed to doing art, because maybe I don't have my setup ready, or maybe I just don't have the mental creative energy for doing art that day. Okay, I think that's a little cleaner, easier to tell what's bare and what's tree. It pops out a little bit more. You want to bring back parts of his ear that I think I kind of got rid of by accident. So yeah, you are going to potentially see on this channel me doing things, random art projects, like catching up on doing Christmas ornaments I probably should have been doing in early December as opposed to the beginning of July. But hey, just getting a jump start on this year. Or you might see me working on coloring, you know, some of the desk drawing stuff that I do on the 6x4 postcard sized things. This is something that I usually might do a sketch. If it's a slow day at work, I might do it at work, or when I get home, if I'm just kind of listening to something on YouTube or something like that, I might do a sketch and ink it, and then usually color it. For those of you who've seen previous, or if you go back and look, some of my previous streams involved a couple of projects I've had. Got the vampire soda pop illustrations I've been working on, and 10 fantasy RPG women. It's not a really catchy project title, so I'm still working on that one, but I kind of started it, so that's how it's gonna go for now. And I'm halfway through that one, and I'm more than halfway through the vampire one, so I'm hoping to get those finished. I'm not sure how many of those will be on the stream right now or not, but might see some of those. But right now I am just trying to catch up with myself on some of these things. 6 little projects I started. Alright, so how many we have? We have 4 rows of 4, so we've got 16. 4 rows, 4 columns, 16. I got a D12. We'll just kind of whittle it down. Alright, so we got number 12. Oh, and I do apologize. The way I had to set up my camera, it is kind of upside down. So when I was only allowed, like, I think the vertical flip, it didn't allow me a horizontal one, so numbers are gonna look a little weird. Alright, so that was number 12. So, that's 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, alright, so we're gonna work on the beaver today. Or to start with, at least. But yeah, I am working on painting some woodland animals on some rustic just cuts of wood that I got off Amazon. I'm not so diehard that I'm gonna go out in the woods and chop down a tree and cut up branches or whatever to get stuff. But I need to get my reference image. Yeah, so I had someone, well, I had my mom asking, like, if me or my sibling had seen any woodland animal ornaments, you know, the rustic woodland animal ornaments, because she wanted to decorate her tree in a particular way this year. I'm like, I haven't seen them, but I can make some. And naturally, I got that idea, started sketching everything out, and didn't get it done in time for Christmas. So, yeah, sometimes that's how, actually, a lot of times that's how projects go, is kind of, you know, you get an idea, get started on it, and then, you know, you just don't have the time for it. Other things get in the way, like holiday stuff. Sorry, I'm pulling up my reference right now. Okay. Just to help me get some of this coloring right. So, yeah. Woodland animals, they'll have a very similar palette, which makes it so convenient. I just have to kind of keep mixing the same similar colors and So, what can you expect this year from this channel? I'm gonna admit I don't 100% know, but I do want to get myself more organized this year with planning out instead of the day of saying, oh, well, I'm kind of working on this project, so let's just stream that. I'd like to kind of have a little bit more of a heads up, which will allow me more prep, and not have to scramble to put text, you know, titles up and descriptions up at the last minute, because I guess these things are a little furrier than I thought. So, yeah, the plan is to make a plan. We'll see how that goes. But in all seriousness, I do have a few. There are 3 major projects I'm kind of looking at working on, and that will probably find their way across this stream. 2 of them, I have been working on. So we had last year, for those of you who haven't seen, last year I was working on, the streaming. I started streaming with the first of the fantasy RPG women. Because the title Fantasy Females, I figured was going to draw in the wrong crowd. So for that particular project, I think one of my ultimate goals with my art, I think, in sort of a business capacity, is to eventually get to the point where I am offering and doing commissions for D&D characters or other RPG characters, so custom characters, commissions, because that's something I enjoy doing, is creating fantasy characters and spending time in kind of that world. And I play D&D, so I didn't get a chance to play D&D until I was working a job and almost in my 30s, I think. Maybe I was in my 30s. And so I'm like, hey, yeah, so the first thing I did was, create this really intricate backstory, because I'm also a writer. And then, naturally, I had to also create an illustration before I went to my first game with my character. It's kind of a good thing my character didn't die. I mean, there was a risk there. Anyway, so but that's one of the things I would love to do, is take people's, and that was one of the things I was kind of doing on the side, is like, at some point I went from taking notes to also taking drawings and illustrations of some of the stuff that was happening during our D&D games. So I'm like, oh yeah, this is cool. This is a lot of fun. Oh, I'd love to do some character creation. So we got to the point in our game where the party, our little adventuring party, got their own kind of settlement or stronghold, I believe is what you would call it at that point. It was kind of massive. It wasn't just a castle, it was a whole floating island. It was pretty cool. But like, each of us ended up with like retainers, because you attract a certain amount of clout in game. Your characters attract a certain amount of attention after they reach certain levels or achievements, and so you're more likely to attract like retainers, people who hang your honors. Sometimes good, sometimes bad, sometimes questionable. Yeah, my character in particular, what did she attract? I think for some reason I ended up being a, like, because basically the way we did it is we kind of rolled something, and the DM pulled out of a table of potential items or retainers who would show up for us to choose whether or not we wanted them. And I think my character was a ranger, and she ended up attracting the attention of a storm giant. So we have a storm giant protecting our stronghold, and which is very useful at one point. And then we had the other one who came along is probably a cultist or something. She runs the tavern for me. But I don't know if we necessarily share the same values sometimes. Also, I think she started the cooking kobold meat on the sly, in the back. So, anyway, but like once like that particular, because that was like us making decisions and all of these things happening and showing up and stuff kind of occurred over one gaming session. And so I'm writing down all of the details of all the different creatures that are showing up, and we had falling bears and tree ants and mysterious demigods or perhaps goddess avatars. Don't know. Mysterious walking armor, or maybe there is somebody in there. Don't know. Anyway, but so I decided that I really wanted to, and mind you, this was also during the beginning of the pandemic, so I had a lot of free time at night, and I'm like, hey, I want to kind of do some of these characters. So I did sketches of and watercolored some of those characters, because I'm just rambling at this point, so probably rambling into the void, so maybe it doesn't matter. But my background art-wise has been, and creative-wise has kind of been just this storytelling centered aspect or idea, and so like things like D&D or other fantasy RPGs like Pathfinder or anything else like that, they kind of spark my interest, and reignite some of my creativity. And so I was like, yeah, this is cool. I'm gonna do some drawings of these characters and stuff. Not that, like, aside from the GM, I don't think many people have seen those characters. I did create a character or some character art for one of the players at the time, as well, but so I have some experience doing that, and like the particular style that I do a lot of this in, like the style I've kind of fallen in. I started out when I was younger deciding, oh yeah, painterly, realistic, I can't do cartooning for crap. I still struggle with that. So you're gonna see more of a realistic-ish style as opposed to caricature style. Caricature is not my strong suit. It's a little bit harder for me. Just because I'm more one of those people who kind of draws what they see as opposed to being able to break it down into expressionist shapes and all of that stuff. Anyway, so where I was going with this was that before that I had my first degree was in like English language literature, and so and then my second degree was in the more the technical side of, you know, engineering and computers and stuff like that. So, but during my time as glorious time as an English major, I ended up taking genre class, because it was a requirement to graduate is take a genre class, and by the time I got around to taking the genre class, I went to a small university, so things kind of like you go with what is available the semester you are kind of scheduled to take it, so you can graduate on time. So at the time what they were offering was comic book. The genres was comic books and graphic novels, or something like that, something to that effect. Is we studied essentially comics, which was really, really interesting because it broadened my idea of what comics were. Because before then, I didn't read comics at all, really. It was more like, I think aside from like the Sunday funnies, the comic section of the newspaper that my grandparents would get, and not even my parents, my grandparents, like that. I think I was sort of familiar with what Spider-Man was because he was in the Sunday comic section of whatever more nationalized news, press, newspaper that my grandparents were getting. So I'm like, oh, yeah, like I'm used to like 4-panel comics. Or, I was familiar with the concept that, hey, my brother, I think, watched like the Batman cartoon back in the 90s or something like that. The 90s one. And like, so like I was familiar with at least the concept of that comic character. And then I think X-Men, there was like an X-Men one that was also on at some point. Something like that. But those were all like, in my perspective, those were all like TV shows. So yes, I understood they came from comic books first, but they're just things that, this whole superhero thing was not my thing. Like, okay, comic books, superheroes, kind of not really my thing. And I think the only other comic I ever read was like some sort of like religious propaganda one. Because it was like, I don't know what it was. It was definitely like probably 1950s or something. I think it might have been the only comic book that my dad had, or they still had, or something. Which I'm still trying to understand why he had it. But yeah, it was like, I think it was the Virgin from Guadalupe or something like that. Where I think it had something to do with some sort of kids saw in a town or something where people were being very sinful, and God had been lost and all this stuff. One little girl had a sighting of saw the Virgin Mary and stuff, and started talking about this sighting. So like that was my only other understanding of what comics were, like religious propaganda. And I'm not knocking religious comics or, you know, stuff like that, but part of it was pretty heavy-handed. Let's just put it that way. And then the superhero stuff, and I think I was only, aside from X-Men, I think the rest of the superhero stuff I was familiar with was DC related. So like I kind of was vaguely aware that like Superman was a thing, and obviously my brother like kind of latched on a little bit to like the Batman. I'm really not sure how we fell into some of this stuff, because it's like comic books were not a thing, and in our household, really, mainly because we lived in a tiny town, there really was not much of a resource for those. And then like so comics really were not a thing. And like we didn't have cable or anything like that, or satellite. Just my parents weren't gonna pay for that, so my grandparents had it. So if we visited them, that's where we saw most of the like the X-Men and stuff like that. But like, yeah, interesting. Anyway, so I think the only other comics that I really... oh no. Just dropped my thing in the paint. The only other comics I really learned about by the time I was in college were... what was it? Star Wars. My brother got into the Dark Horse Star Wars omnibuses and stuff like that. The good stuff that you can't get anymore because a certain mouse declared it as never existing, and you can't. They're redoing it anyway. I won't get on that rant. We don't need that here. At least not right now. So, yeah. Suffice it to say, my concept of comics and graphic novels and all of that was very limited going into the class. I'm like, okay. But there was also a certain amount, like, because I had seen what they did with some of the, like, Star Wars graphic novels. I'm like, well, yeah, this... And obviously, because they're teaching a literature class on it, obviously it's got some merit, right? And it's a little bit more interesting and out there than some of the other genre classes might have been. Although, you know, knowing me, I would have eaten up any of the genre classes they would have potentially offered. Well, most of them. Harlequin romance probably doesn't count. Although I don't think that they count that as a genre. It's, yeah, you get some uppity stuff when you're in the college, in the academia world. But that was also like kind of the point of the particular course I took was like they did bring up there is great debate and argument as to whether or not we can consider comics and like graphic novels and stuff like that as literature. Like, is it literature? Is it entertainment? Like, how do we end up defining it? You know, most people see it as this, you know, it's stuff that kids read, you know, or you know, single guys living in their parents' basement. Like there's a stigma stigma, stereotype, both, kind of surrounding this. So it's like, oh yeah, definitely not something that's witty-twitty literature people would learn. Except for the guy was, the professor was very geeky. The geeky, quiet guy. So it's like, yeah, it's no surprise he kind of jumped on that. Honestly, it would have been cool to have a genre class on, like, story in video games. That I would have really jumped onto. I tried to do my, I think the first go at my senior thesis was actually that. Related to trying to look at story and how it, all the different forms it takes in, what do you call it, video games and games in general. So, I was going to get away with playing Mass Effect and KOTOR, Knights of the Old Republic, as part of my research, and then my computer bit the dust. I'm like, ah, shit. Anyway, so I'm in this class, for this genre class, learning about comics and being introduced to all of these different types of comics. Some of them that are, like, they're very profound and very, very deep. And others are were very uncomfortable for me. I come from a more conservative background, so, I mean, being an English major, period, if you're a conservative, it's like, you're gonna have a lot of things, you're gonna have to let go of a lot of things, and kind of start to learn how to accept wider things and not be too shocked about it. Yeah, I could talk a whole other essay on that. But, like, for me, but I learned a whole lot of stuff. Like, we had to think, oh gosh, what's the guy's name? I am so sorry that I'm forgetting his name right now. I know it's on the shelf behind me, and I want to have to get up and take the microphone off and all that stuff to figure it out. But he wrote Understanding Comics, really good book, and it's written as a graphic novel or a comic. It's a really cool read for anyone. And I do recommend it if you're curious about comics, if you're, understanding how, like, different things that go into it and different considerations and stuff. And so, like, this class kind of touched on the two touchstones for me, which are, like, writing and creating story, and drawing, but also creating story with drawing. Which is one of the things that, like, I'm hoping to be able to visit multiple times upon this channel, just to kind of, because that's a core of who I am. Like, what I do as a job during the day is what pays the bills, and it's important, and it's not trivial work either. It's just, it's not my deep and abiding passion, let's put it that way. If all else fails, I bleed story. But, like, I'm sitting here and realizing that this thing that I have hardly ever touched on before and never really thought about, this thing could scratch an itch. It could scratch an itch. Whoops. Two that I have that I didn't, kind of realize I had. So, like, I'm sitting here in this class getting really fascinated, and at the same time, I'm working on my, I think it was either that semester or a semester after or something, maybe both, where I'm working toward my senior thesis for my undergraduate, and like and that was I ended up switching it from the video game thing, which just didn't work out, to eventually like writing a sci-fi play and performing it and stuff. So I'm like, hey, this is like I'm all about this world building stuff and enjoying it. Like, I could put pictures together and tell a story with pictures and words. This is so cool. So at some point, like after that course, I ended up getting a book by Jessica Abel and Matt Smith. They did it together. This drawing words and writing pictures, I think it is, or maybe it's the other way around. Because I wanted to learn how to make my own comic, like make a web comic. I had a very ambitious and grand idea that has yet to see fruition of like doing let's get a little bit of white here, oh, and a little here too, doing a graphic or webcomic of my play, my sci-fi play that I finished for college. It's like, yeah, I can do this, you know, me with 1,000 projects I want to do, and not enough time for them. I have no idea how I thought I was going to be able to do that going into a career of teaching and stuff, so I'm like, anyway, but that class introduced me to the concept of, hey, I can tell stories. 'Cause we read things, and at the time I was very uncomfortable reading some things like The Watchmen and Love and Rockets and Fun Home, I think is what it was called. But you know, things like oh my gosh, it's a thick book, but we only like read the first like volume of Bone. Oh my gosh, that is, I recommend that to anyone and everyone. It is such a good book. It is basically sort of like Lord of the Rings comic, like comic equivalent of Lord of the Rings. It's just a very, it's this very big adventure that this little bone person has with his cousins, and yeah, it's very much princesses and sci-fi, or not sci-fi, fantasy, and you know, psychic power. It's a good read, and it's also appropriate for, you know, kids, probably a little bit older because there are some scary parts, but you know, Scholastic published it, and it's been done in, it was done originally in black and white, and then he did it in color. But I'm like, I'm looking at I'm just wandering all over, but nobody's listening, so, or if you want to listen, you can listen to this later on, or just speed up, you know, just put me on mute and just, you know, speed watch me paint. But like that particular graphic novel, like, oh my gosh, you can tell epic stories and stuff. Yes, I want to do that, but it was also, that was a book that helped me. I'm probably one of the worst days during college. For those of you who are going to college in whatever capacity, you know, in the future, in it currently, understand that no matter how high a position a professor has, they don't have the right to treat you like shit. Like, they just don't. And if they do understand that, you have to understand that it doesn't matter, like, what position, like, what I'm trying to say is anybody can be a bully. Even people who are supposed to be mentors and guiding people, and, you know, it happens. They can sneak into positions of power and try to manipulate people and make people feel bad about themselves, and yeah. Anyway, so I had a run-in with this particular person because they were the dean of my college, and I had to ask for, I went in there for something very simple. Just should have been a straightforward thing. And she turned it around and decided to start telling me that I wasn't living my life right, and that I was gonna be I was not social enough, and I was not this, and I was not that, and I'm just going to be a miserable person, and all this stuff. It's like saying a lot of hurtful things that I knew sitting there. I knew they weren't true, but it's like there was a part of me that stuff was triggering me, and stuff like that. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So, and what is in that kind of a position? It's really difficult because this is somebody who's in a position of power over me, and is the one who's going to determine whether or not I can get this waiver to get into the class that I need in order to graduate this year. And because it's like, otherwise I would have had to wait one more full year to get into the class. And that would have been the only class I was taking. Like, it was stupid. Anyway, what should have been a very straightforward thing, just turned into this session where she got to have fun playing mind games, and I left crying and hid myself in the library until I could calm down. And you know what calmed me down? I went to the bookshelves because I was working at the library and I knew exactly where everything was, especially the comic book section. And I pulled out that book. I pulled out Bone, and I let that kind of reground me and help me to get back into perspective and wash away her nasty words and nasty perspective on things, because usually when people are doing that to you, it's because they have nothing better to do in their life, or something in their life is going really wrong. And yeah, I believe it's what they now call a Karen, who finds fault in everything and is never satisfied when other people are happy. Anyway, but I learned that comics are not just the weird edgy stuff, the comics with an X, or that Love and Rockets thing or whatever. It's not all this weird edgy stuff, and it's not all superheroes. It's a lot of different things. It's fantasy. It's just slice of life stuff. It can be for kids. It can be for adults. It can be for very mature adults. You know, it's for anybody and everybody, and anybody and can write like their kind of the story that they want to see, that they need to see. And that's kind of why one of the reasons I got into teaching myself how to draw comics. I learned how to do like the underdrawing or the pencils, and learned how to do the then do the inking, and then eventually I learned how to do the coloring. That one took a little bit longer. I'm not gonna lie, because like I tried to do it on my computer and I did not have anything except for this really janky tablet thing that wasn't even like, it didn't have a screen on it. It was just this really flimsy thing. It worked, I mean, but I also didn't know what programs I was supposed to be using. And at the time I was like on a teacher's salary, so I'm like, I'm not gonna be able to afford Photoshop. That's not in my budget. I've got to buy supplies for my classroom. I can't afford to be buying myself. Anyway, so, but why did I want to start teaching myself how to draw like that? Well, because one of my advisors in college, after I got done with that play, is like, yeah, you know, and I'm discussing all of the world building stuff that I'm thinking of and knowing and all of this. It's like, no, that would be an interesting graphic novel. I'm like, oh, that's a good idea. And so by that time I had started dabbling in reading like webcomics and stuff like that. And like, oh my gosh, I was not in my college class. They're like, oh yeah, webcomics. They're kind of like this continuous scroll thing, or they're like the funny pages thing, like a couple of, you know, like the Sunday funnies and stuff like that. Yeah, that's the extent of what webcomics are. Like, yeah, no, that's not the extent of what they are. I found that out quite quickly when I started going online, and I can't even remember why I went on Comic Rocket initially. Probably my brother. There's a lot of stuff I started because of my brother. It's like, hey, check out this thing. I think you'd like it. And I'm like, oh, okay. Oh yeah, I do. So yeah, I went on there and I found things like Daughter of the Lilies. Go read it. It is awesome. If you love D&D, if you love fantasy, any of that sort of thing, it's not D&D, but it still has that adventuring vibe to it. Because it's definitely not in the D&D world. It's her own world. It is amazing. Fell in love with it. I'm like, I want to write epic stuff like this. But, you know, understanding... Oh, and then Pascalle Lepas. Oh my gosh. Look her up. She does some freaking amazing stuff. Like, I wish I could... Oh, Zap. Z-A-P-P apostrophe. Which I know there's something else called Zap, but it's... Anyway, it started off like probably... It was started off better than what I would draw in anime or manga, excuse me, style, and I really don't draw well. But like, she went from this really rough manga, colored manga style, anime style, however you want to call it, to, oh my gosh, it was so beautiful by the end. And then she went on to write Wildlife, and that's Wild, W-I-L-D-E, so an E on the end of Wild, as in Oscar Wilde. And that's like, if you like paranormal like modern day sort of paranormal, witchy, werewolves, plus writerly stuff and some ghosts, and it's just, oh. And if you just like good art, like, it's amazing. Her backgrounds are, like, she's got sunsets and beautiful greenery. It's just, it's gorgeous just to sit there and look at a panel sometimes. But yeah, so like, I quickly found out that, hey, going online and looking up webcomics, yeah, you can go on Tapas and things like Webtoon and it's Spiderwood or Spider something, you know, any of those, and you're gonna find a lot of anime style or manga style things, and yeah, but like, there are also people like Lepas and Pascalle Lepas, and I apologize, I cannot remember the name of the person who wrote Daughter of the Lilies, writes Daughter of the Lilies, because it's still going on. That's the beauty of webcomics, is like they're living entities, and that is just the coolest part about it. Is, but they also can quickly die or be lost to the, you know, maybe somebody gives up on it, or they don't have time, or something happens in life and you may never see a story finished. An example would be like Prog Race. That comic was, or that webcomic was very, very interesting, but, and I completely respect this, the author just did not, I'm not sure if it's she, but they got to a point where they're like, I'm not sure where this is going, and I'm not having fun with it anymore, so I'm going to let it drop off, and they just kind of quit on the story. So, and I get it. I completely get it. Honestly, I was guilty of that as well. My venture into trying to make the play I wrote into a comic lasted 3 pages, I think, before I kind of let it off, but there were some extenuating circumstances too, because like I lost my job in my first career, then I had to switch careers, so that meant I had to go back to school, and then getting into life happened. So that kind of, that's another thing you have to take into account, is life's gonna happen. You're gonna try some things, and maybe you have time for it at the beginning, and maybe you don't. You know, and maybe it falls off and you don't get a chance to get back to it. And it's frustrating, and it's sad. And sometimes you will come back to it years later and make another go of it. And maybe it'll work. Anyway, so where was I going with this? I don't know, very long ramble. But so I learned what could be done. I learned that there really are no limitations on stories that can be told, genres that can be told, like in comic format. You have so many options for how to present it. That was also part of my problem, was like, there are so many ways that I could draw this scene, or draw, you know, what this dialogue is talking about, and like, it becomes decision paralysis at some point, which is frustrating. But at the same time, it's like, I don't regret trying my hand at it, learning a new skill. It's totally worth it, because in the end, it helped me work on a particular art style, and that's the lines, like the comic book style, where you get your line work is visible. You know, usually your black lines, not always, but frequently, you know, the more classic comic book style of black lines, and then either black and white shading, or the color. And, you know, my big limitation on coloring was like not having the materials and stuff. So I was doing a lot of black and white stuff initially, and then when I finally got around to trying to do it with watercolor or do it with when they came out initially, at least in the area where I was working, there was you may have heard of the Spectrum Noir alcohol markers. If you haven't heard of Spectrum Noir, they're basically a much cheaper version than the Copic markers, which are also alcohol markers, and like they it was easier for me to kind of, I think at the time when I bought them, they were like $14.99 or something like that for 6 pens, and that was much cheaper than some of the Copic ones. And so I was really thrilled to be able to get those, but I couldn't get the hang of it. Like there was something about the way that I was approaching working with those markers, and that like I gradually bought like each of the packs to get all of like the spectrum of colors, at least that were there at the time for me to be able to purchase. But at the time, I just struggled. I struggled so hard to try to understand like how to make these colors work together and look good in a comic page, and it was horrible. And so I kind of let them be for a while because, you know, went back to college and everything else that was going on in my life at the time. Like, okay, this is clearly not something that's going to really happen anytime soon, and I don't have the time to figure it out, so I'm going to just put them in the drawer, which is essentially what I did. Put them in the drawer for a bit and leave them alone. And then when I got back, like when I got into the, oh yeah, I'd like to kind of illustrate some of these, because I also did a couple of panels, a couple of pages of like particular summarizing some of the stuff that we did during our games, some of our games. Because I'm like, hey, yeah, this is a really cool thing I want us to kind of remember. So I'm like, hey, yeah, I'm gonna draw this. But most of that stuff was like black and white, and then I tried doing a color one because I really wanted to do color because the particular world that we ended up in had like some very colorful like characters and creatures and scenery and stuff. I'm like, I want to capture that. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna give this one more try. One more try with those pens. I'm like, oh boy. Like it ended up looking like something from the like Technicolor 1960s, 1970s Technicolor type thing that just, where it just didn't look, it was too, I don't know. There's something about that style that just is clashy for me, and I'm sorry for those who grew up at the time, but it screams old. But yeah, I'm like, no, this isn't working. This is not working. So, like, okay, nope, I'm giving up on these. And then, you know, just like 2 years ago? I think it was 2 years ago, maybe sooner than that. I'm like, the problem is I keep watching these people on YouTube, these artists on YouTube who are using these markers, like Jazza. And I'm like, okay, it is possible. It is possible to do some stuff with this. I want to do that. I want to do what they're doing. But why isn't it working for me? So I'm like, okay, I'll give it one more try, see if I can figure this out. And there was something about this time around. I don't know if I was focusing on color theory or something more. But I ended up making my quote-unquote fantasy capybara, because it is not appropriately proportioned. It was basically just a few lines, suggestions that it started out as, and I'm like, oh hey, yeah, no, that kind of looks like this thing, and then I drew it in like this field of weird sort of tulipy pink flowers, and it's eating them and stuff. And that's like, I did it on like a nice big piece of paper. For some reason, I only did this half. I'm like, well, okay. The combinations I picked out here actually are pretty nice. That's pretty. I want to see if I can keep replicating this. So I ended up drawing a like very colorfully feathered velociraptor on the other side, which is also like one of my companion for my ranger in my D&D game, or the D&D game. And so, like, oh, okay, so, hey, wait, how is it that they have all of these vibrant, why does this feel far more vibrant than what I've been trying before? Like, what happened? I guess alcohol markers actually work. I don't have to break out the watercolor every time I want to go paint, you know, a comic panel or something like that. Even though I haven't done one in a comic panel or any comic things in like years. It may happen again, I don't know. I have so many projects that I want to do and want to try, and I just never know what's going to be the focus. And focus is something I need to do for this year. It's kind of one of the goals, is making sure that my efforts are somewhat more focused. But yeah, so I learned the comic book style, and part of that process I really liked, and it stuck with me. So, you know, most of what I do now, in my spare time and stuff, you know, when I'm doing the desk drawings or sketches or whatever, like this whole idea of, hey, I do an initial pencil sketch, and then once I like it, I'm gonna lock it in with a micron pen, and then from there I can like decide if I want to and almost universally lately it's been yes, if I want to color it or not. Now, like, I don't know who I'm supposed to blame for this one. I don't know if it's Jazza, if it's what is her name? I think it's Sarah Marie Clark or something like that. She does a lot of pencils, but she also does some alcohol marker stuff along with it. And both really good people to check out as creators because I really respect them and they have some cool stuff that they do. Especially Jazz. I understand the desire to constantly be trying new things, new media, new art styles, new challenges. Like that's part of what makes art fun for me, but it also is part of what makes it very hard for me to market myself as an artist because there's a lot of stuff I want to try and do, and like people are like, ooh, tell us what kind of artist you are. I'm like, well, what day of the week is it? I don't know. Maybe right now I am a comic artist. Maybe I'm a portrait artist. Like, yeah, it's anyway. So I was going somewhere with this. Oh gosh, I'm sorry. Oh, right. So I have to blame either Jazza or I feel like Sarah Renee. Sorry, it's not Marie, it's Renee. Sarah Renee Clark. One of those two I have to blame for me going out and buying the Ohuhu markers. And oh boy. I don't want to be the one that you guys blame for it though. But those are the markers that I've been using to color the what do you call it? The fantasy women and stuff that I've been doing. Because oh my gosh, it's like working with a brush, and some people hate that about it. Like some people hate the brush tip on them, and like for me, it was a selling point. Like, oh yes, I understand how brushes work. This makes sense to me. So that was part of the selling point for me. So yeah, but once I unlocked or got satisfied with the concept of how to color with the alcohol markers and stuff, like that's kind of opened up this whole range of potential for me, for you know how I want to work and what I want to work with and stuff like that. So let's just throw some wood chips and stuff in here. It's been a busy beaver. So yeah, but I know. So basically, I've moved from like when I was younger. Like if you look through any of my sketchbooks, it was mainly like realistic as I could manage to make. Like that, the realism was kind of at the forefront for me as far as like I'm not going to be satisfied unless this is realistic. And so when it came to trying to do like comics, that's where I started struggling. I'm like, well, I gotta be able to do something that's repeatable, and the way I work, it doesn't feel repeatable. And then me not being able to make caricatures or cartoon-like things was another part of the frustration of trying to make comics. I have made one like a one-shot like web comic, which I need to get up on my website, my new website at some point, just so everything's more or less in the same place. But yeah, that's all in black and white. I did kind of want to do part of it in color, but I never quite got around to it, and because I did it in shaded black and white, I can't easily go back and go back over it with color. But now that I have mastered color, it's like, yeah, that'd be something really cool to do, but I still need to master the idea of, you know, working long term on a project, and being able to devote the time to make like a comic. That's the problem with a lot of these grand projects, and I don't think I'm the only artist who runs into this, is like, we can have ideas and think, oh, it would be so cool to do this project or that project, or try doing this, or writing this, like doing a whole comic about this thing, but like the scope of your project, like just keeps expanding and expanding, and like your time and energy are all finite, especially, you know, regardless, they are finite, and especially if it's not your like job, if it's not your full-time job, if it's just something that you have a few hours during the week or a few hours during the evening to work on, it's like you have to make the choice of what is worth your time to work on, and what is like, what could you realistically get done. And that's part of, I think we're getting close here. That's part of the assessment. Yeah, I don't think I put that on there very well. It's gonna kind of like hang like that. Oh well. But I think it's the crazy part of making an assessment of a big project. Is like, on the one hand, it's gonna take a lot of your time, but on the other hand, like, if you devote that time at the end, what is that awesome thing that you're gonna have? And so sitting there and not doing it, obviously you're gonna take all that time and not do it. Whereas, yeah, it's kind of, it is the ever ongoing debate as to whether or not I go and I pick up the idea of doing a comic. And I still don't think I'm ready for that. I think I have not gotten to the point where I can quickly and repeatedly draw things, and I am getting much quicker. Like, here's the important takeaway, folks. Young artists, new artists, old artists probably already know this, and people who've been doing it for a bit, but like, practice. I know it sounds so tedious, but just taking that time to doodle and practice each day, that's how I have been able to suddenly in an evening, you know, take this and within an hour or so go from a little sketch, from a reference, into doing all the detail stuff of the inking and finalizing it. Like, it's, for me, it's shocking and exciting to realize that because I've been doing this repeatedly, I can now do something I would never have imagined. I wouldn't have thought I would be able to do. I would have thought that, yeah, that would be something I wish I could do and dream of doing, but I wouldn't have thought that even a couple of years ago that I could do something like this, you know, in an hour. Or in an evening, let's put it that way. So I don't exactly time myself on stuff. That's another reason why I'm streaming, is because I can go back and I can look at how long it actually took me to do stuff. whether or not it's, you know, it took me an hour to paint this, or an hour and a half, or, you know, and that helps me figure out timing of what I can offer to do in the future and stuff like that. So, that is, definitely beyond what I initially intended to stream. So, yeah, tonight we got fixed a little bit so our bear doesn't fade into the background quite as much, although I'm looking at this ground and maybe I need to fix that a little bit too. I don't know. I'll think about it. And then we got this lovely little beaver completed as well. No, I think I want to add a little shine to its eye. It's a really tiny eye, so it's going to be just the tiniest little thing. But it does make it pop a little bit more. So yeah. So far, we have 3 little woodland creatures. Of the, I guess 18 is what I had initially. So, yeah, because I had 16 earlier, and now we've got 3 of them done. So, yeah, that is under the stream. I will be coming back next week. I'm not sure at this point what I'm going to be doing. I may be painting more ornaments, or I had intended to work on some miniatures, and I think I will potentially be starting to do maybe some miniature dioramas, or maybe we'll save that for February and I'll just keep going with these little critters. Alright, well, I hope you guys have a good evening, day, afternoon, morning. I'll talk to you, I'll talk at you next week. Bye.